Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Simone. I am one of the instructional coaches in Garnet Valley. Alongside me is Christine Gumpert. We're just going to talk about the ethics piece and some of the examples that we used in Garnet Valley currently. We're going to really dive into rethink plagiarism and cheating, and also being proactive and teach our students how to use AI appropriately versus inappropriately. We'll go over a few scenarios and how that worked out so far this last school year and what we're going to continue to try and do moving forward. So on the next slide, yeah, perfect.
It's perfect. Thank you. And nice to be here with everyone. A little bit nervous to follow that awesome presentation by AJ. Thank you. And a lot of the things that he spoke about were themes that we've been seeing as well over the last 6-7+ months that we've been talking with our educators about AI. And the biggest takeaway that we also have had with this process is that we need to shift our thinking. And initially, when this came out, I remember sitting around a table with our team, and some of us knew about it, some of us had no idea, but we all started diving in, and it was nerve-wracking at the beginning, thinking about what is this? And new technology can always be scary, right? Whenever something comes out that we're not familiar with, we're a little bit nervous. And we also, especially with our secondary educators, we realize that our students probably know more about it than we do when we first hear about it. So that was the initial scary part. Also, a lot of the things that AJ mentioned, the articles that came out about the end of writing, the end of essays, and the end of a lot of those things that a lot of our teachers build their practice upon, that's alarming. That made a lot of people feel uncomfortable to start. And so we've had teachers, we've seen school districts banning it, as Sam mentioned. We have had teachers in our own district that have gone back to handwritten essays as a way to combat it. And these quick reactions, these quick responses were just ways to try to make us feel safe in an uncertain kind of reality. But now that we've had a chance to kind of dive in deeper, and now that we've had a chance to talk to our teachers and collaborate as colleagues and also talk to our students, we're starting to feel a little bit more comfortable about embracing this. We've had great support from our school district in encouraging us to not only use it as educators, but to use it with our students at the various grade levels in appropriate ways. So on the next slide, we'd like to kind of show you the gateway tool here that we used with our teachers. Back in, I think it was February, we hosted our first professional development session on AI. And this infographic here is from a gentleman named Matt Miller that you are most likely familiar with. He's from the Ditch That Textbook Enterprise. And we really thought it was a great piece for multiple reasons. Along the right-hand side, you'll see different ways that students could potentially be using AI. Then in the middle, you'll see that color-coded continuum arrow, which showed us bot created at the top and human created down at the bottom. And then just some thought-provoking questions on the side. But instead of just handing this out or slapping it up on a slide deck like we're doing here, we actually wanted to do an integrated or interactive activity with our teachers. So what we did is we took those, looks like there's 6 of them there, those 6 different scenarios, and we put them on chart paper around the classroom. And we simply did a basic T-chart, yes or no. Is this cheating? Yes or no. And we had the teachers, without any conversation or dialogue, visit each of the chart papers, read the short scenario, and just their gut reaction, check yes or check no. And then what we did is then we had our conversations, and we talked about, because some of them were clear cut, like the top one there, a student plugged in a prompt to AI, copied the response and submitted it to the teacher. Just about every single individual said, yes, that's cheating, and rightfully so. There's no work from the student there. There's no evidence of learning. But some of the other ones had some dialogue. Some of the other ones had checks on both sides. And after a great activity in that PD session, we had a couple teachers reach out, especially at the high school level, and they asked us if we would come in and do the same activity with their students. And it was something that we did with all different grade levels. We used this activity as a kickoff for writing like research paper projects to kind of get the students to think about, how AI could potentially be used or misused in their research process. And so from that, though, we realized that the students' conversations were so rich, and we could make them even richer by providing more specific examples that were relevant to the students themselves. So on the next slide, I'm going to let Mike explain one of these scenarios that we used with some of our AP students at the high school.
So with students at the high school, what we did was we gave these scenarios out, and we had students really think about, was this human powered, which was totally not cheating, or was it bot powered, was totally cheating, or somewhere in the middle, or a little ahead of towards one, or a little less ahead of towards another. So what we're going to ask you to do, I'm going to read these aloud. I want you to really think about this, and then in the chat, put a number in for me. And then from that number, either a phrase or a sentence on why you chose that number, okay? So let's get rolling here. So the first scenario, it says, Betty was assigned a creative writing assignment and is struggling to get started. She has a serious case of white page syndrome. She goes to ChatGPT and prompts the bot to create a story that aligns with the rubric provided by her teacher. The bot provides a full story. Betty then asks it to regenerate stories multiple times, and the bot provides multiple variations. After she reads them, Betty uses ideas from the various bot versions and weaves them into her creative writing assignment. Is this plagiarism?
So again, we'll give you a moment to go into the chat there, the chat side, not the Q&A, and give us your ranking 1 through 5 on our continuum, and maybe a quick explanation as to why you chose your number. All right, we're seeing some good things coming through here. Thank you for your participation.
Now, I love that I see a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5 throughout, which is awesome because as you can imagine, with high school students, when we did this with them, it was kind of all over, but we asked certain questions that kind of went around with it. Some of the students, they mentioned that it's a creative writing assignment. So any use of AI is problematic. But then we talked about like, well, how is this different from teachers providing exemplars from former years? Is Betty trying to just get a couple of ideas that will kind of spark her creativity and then put it into her writing? So it kind of really depends how you're really going to look at it. So again, is this human powered? Is it bot powered? Is this labeled cheating or not? And that's that gray area where we're in. And I love what AJ said earlier about that care. Do you really care about the work? So I just think that's pretty neat. I really appreciate everybody putting it in there. That the last one just said she didn't just copy and paste something into the writing. So again, as you can imagine, the conversations that spiraled through just this one scenario led to some really good discussion on how to share and teach our students how to use this into their everyday work.
And just to note on how we did this with our students, we used some of these same examples with them, and we actually had them do a movement activity while we were presenting. So we had, instead of having them put in a chat because we were live with them, we had them get up and move one side of the room to the other, from a human powered to a bot powered. Or in one particularly large class, we didn't have them moving around. Instead, we used a Jamboard. But then we were able to have those conversations, have them turn and talk. And based on this one, Mike, most of them are coming through at the 1 to 3 range. And that is along the lines of what the students that we worked with did as well.
Agreed.
So on the next slide, we'll pop into another writing example.
So now going back to with the students, with the class that I was with, before I click to the next slide, which this one is James, a student asked me a question about, well, hey, what if I wrote a full paper and I typed it and copied and pasted into ChatGPT to see what they said about grammar and spelling. So I want you to think about that. I said, oh, funny you should say that. So then we went to this scenario. So here's the next one. It says, James was assigned a research paper at the beginning of the semester. He used ChatGPT to brainstorm topics to formulate his thesis. He then spent the last few months researching and writing his paper. Now that he has a final draft, he returns to ChatGPT to have the bot check his paper for spelling, grammar, and logic. The bot makes suggested changes, which James implements. He submits the paper to his teacher. Is this plagiarism? And I'm just reading some of these here. Virginia and Stephen, in my notes, that's kind of where I was heading. The human powered versus bot powered. And this is some of the things that we shared with that student that asked the question, you know, what if I wrote my paper, but I asked ChatGPT to go to spelling, grammar, those pieces to kind of check. And that was one of the things that we said, like, what's the difference between Grammarly editing or something that you do in the autocorrect when you're sending a text, right? And then also you're having someone else read it. Instead of having someone else read it, you're having a bot read it. But again, going back to what AJ said about the care piece, maybe someone else reading it might give a more of a feeling based versus the bot. But again, you're using it for spelling and grammar. Is it human powered? Is it bot powered? Is it cheating or not? I mean, again, that gray area of where we're living in. But again, how are we going to teach and you to have students use this to their best ability and the way that it should be used? Christine, anything to add?
I mean, the chat's great. I love all the pieces that are in here. We have a lot of ones. I like the people that brought up of how is this different than asking a friend or a parent or a teacher to read a rough draft for you. See my buddy Dave there saying it would be crazy not to use this. And that's kind of where we really are at this point in time, that we should be using these tools to further our education, to further our students' education. And the one question on there, no, we did not use ChatGPT to generate these. These were just examples that we had after working with the students for a couple of weeks and hearing their questions about AI, but AI could definitely write these for you as well. We have one last example if you're willing to play along for one more round, and we're going to shift subjects here. So if we could go on to the next slide, we're going to be looking at a math example. So here we have our friend Fred, and Fred has 20 math problems for homework that night. And this is a little bit similar to what AJ kind of alluded to earlier. So Fred tries the first one, he's totally confused. He pops out his phone, he goes onto PhotoMath to solve it. Once he saw the worked solution, he understood the concept and did a few more problems on his own. Fred feels totally prepared for tomorrow's quiz after doing, let's say, maybe 8 or 9 problems. So he's going to use ChatGPT or PhotoMath to solve the rest of them. How do we feel about Fred's work here? Is this human powered or bot powered? And what are your thoughts on it? All right. And just like the classroom that I was in, I did this example with a pre-algebra core group. And a lot of the students were saying the same thing, that they thought it was a good use of it. A couple of them were a little uncomfortable that Fred didn't do all of the problems. But then other kids are saying like, hey, if he's finished, if he understands, then he's good to go. And interestingly enough, the teacher in that classroom said if the kid understands and they don't need to do all 20 problems. So this not only is kind of pushing our thinking a little bit with artificial intelligence, it's also pushing our thinking a little bit with that idea of mastery learning and homework. And really, you know, do you need to do all 20 problems to prove that you understand a concept, or will you be able to show that on the quiz tomorrow if you truly understand? So again, and this is the trouble part with the students, there's no right or wrong answer when we look at these scenarios. It's really about interpretation, and it's really about those conversations. And that's why we felt these scenarios were important to share with you all, because this is how we've started working with our students to kind of get them to the point of having, you know, those gray area conversations around AI and what is important. And it's vital that each individual teacher speaks with their students about it, because that's really where the understandings are going to start to formulate, and we're going to shift soon into talking a little bit more about policy. So on the next slide, we'll just kind of wrap up briefly before we pass it off to our next panelists.
And that's just clearing the confusion. We are in it. AI is a very gray area. And again, I keep bringing up AJ, a lot of the things that he brought up. The one video was 3 years old. And a lot of the AI that we're using, and that is quote unquote new. Yeah, we need to really shift our thinking. And is what we're doing, is it totally human powered versus bot powered? And how can we teach teachers, but also students, the way to use the AI to support their caring learning environment? And the address of the use of AI in every assignment is what's going to be next when we dive into policy. Thanks for listening, guys.
Mike and Christine, that was awesome. So thank you so much.